Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of A Limited Time Only. I'm your host, Spencer, and I am joined by my co host, a man that's on a limited podcast and doesn't know how to draft.
I propose I know how to draft sometimes. Like when
it's important.
when it's important, I draft okay. Sometimes I go a little bit off the rails, but this format is good for me though. It rewards going completely off the deep end. So
we'll get into that shortly. Before we do, don't forget to check out our sponsors at GameGrid and the Mana Base. They are two amazing sponsors that we really appreciate. You can check out all the amazing content at the Mana Base. You want to check out their sponsor at Fusion Gaming. You can buy all of your Shield product for your home drafts at Fusion Gaming. Check them out and let them know that Limited Time Only sent you. It means a lot to us. So you can also check out GameGrid if you're local to Utah. They are an amazing place to play Magic the Gathering. I went into GameGrid Lehigh on Tuesday to see what people were doing. So I walked in and Baby Bird was like, "Spencer Hallen, what are you doing here?" I was like, "Well, I live like 2 football fields away now." So
yeah, pretty close.
So check out our sponsors. We really, really appreciate them. You can also support this podcast directly by hitting the donate button down below, just right here, somewhere on your screen there. If you're watching, there's a donate button. It's funny. I'm like having a standing mic now, so if I put my hands up, it changes the sound. That's great. You can also support the podcast directly by going to patreon.com/ccmtg. It's a great way to support the show. We really appreciate it. Danny, it is really, really quiet in my new basement.
You're like in a closed room in a basement in a quiet neighborhood. Yeah, I could see how it would be pretty quiet.
It's kind of weird, to be completely honest. Do you know what's not weird? Us doing this podcast, except for me, because I haven't been here in a month. But our first segment is coming up next. We're going to talk about our biggest movers. Our biggest movers every week. We want to talk about the things that have changed in the draft format from week to week, or that we've noticed changing, or how we perceive the format in it, every week. So, Danny, what are your biggest movers? And I want you to start with your biggest mover down, because I think you're actually insane.
Really? So yes, my biggest mover down this week.
Unless you had it better than everywhere in the set, and now it's moved down, I think you're probably.
No, I think you might be wrong about this one. So, Unquenchable Thirst is it's reasonable.
No, but it is probably the best blue common.
I don't think so. I don't know. So, in the past little bit, I've had it be punished more than you would expect. So, in general, the pacifism types of effects don't have too many ways to punish them. But in this set, there's quite a few. So the claustrophobia doesn't work like it normally does. So there's the white guy that untaps your creature. So that's kind of a free way to get around it. There's the white combat trick. So anytime you're playing against someone that's white, they have a lot of ways to untap their guys and then proceed to give them vigilance or just use them as blockers or get in for the last points of damage that you thought you were preventing. And so I've seen that when you play Unquenchable Thirst and you, in your mind, you think of it as a hard removal spell, but it actually isn't. And you can set yourself up for misplays by leaving yourself dead to specifically white untap effects. So I don't know. So you just need to be careful for that. It's more of an experience that I've had with that specific card this week that I think is an important thing to know. If you have Unquenchable Thirst on something, it's not dead. You still have to think about it still, if that makes sense.
Okay. I don't know if that makes the card not the best blue common though.
No, it's definitely worse though. There's a whole color that has 4 different cards that all punish that removal spell really hard.
Yeah. I'm gonna say that it's better than Aerial Guide, and I think Aerial Guide is actually insane.
Okay.
I could be wrong here.
But
the fact that this was your biggest mover down, to me, it could have been my biggest mover up.
Interesting. So, I guess it's mostly I still think the card is good in draft, and it's definitely reasonable, but you have to be careful. It's not as cut and dry great as I thought it was. So I think I was about where you were, and I'm just like coming down a little bit because there's some counterplay to it, if that makes sense. But
Okay. What's your biggest mover up?
my biggest mover up is Oasis Ritualist, and I think I already thought this card was good.
This card, yeah.
I think when we did the set review,
high grade on the set review.
Yeah, so I think we both were either like close to giving it like one of the top 3 green commons, but it's like getting pretty close to just being like ambuscade level good. Like it's like really, really good, and in sealed, it's like a bomb in sealed. Like it's broken in sealed, but in draft, it's really, really powerful. And like you can, if my opponent just plays an Oasis Ritualist, I am terrified. Like if I don't have a way to kill it, I just expect for them to play a Sifter Worm or a Chaos Maw or a God Pharaohs. Like there's so many terrifying things that could come out of us after an Oasis Ritualist that I've just moved it up. Like it's one of the cards that I'm most afraid of my opponents playing. And then when I'm playing a deck that's really playing all the different colors and playing the big bombs, it's the one card that you want to draw more than anything. So
yeah, it couldn't move up much for me because like I remember just on our Pro Tour weekend testing, we I drafted that black green Oasis Ritualist deck that had like that and Naga Vitalist, and I was like, this deck is like got 7 drops, it's got multiple 6 drops, it can and I just early on I was like, yeah, this format's not as fast as I think it is, and this is probably pretty good. So
yeah, the card's pretty dumb.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's pretty good. My biggest mover down is not even close. So I haven't been on the show in 3 weeks. I think this might have been your biggest mover down last week.
I think it was, actually.
Lethal Sting is like legitimately not that good.
Yeah, it's fine. It really depends on your deck, but
yeah, you would think that a 3 mana kill anything removal spell would just be good, because it just kills anything. Mm-hmm. But making like one of your creatures that you've invested mana in to like kind of a crappy creature is a pretty big deal. So like unless your deck has like Oasis, Naga Vitalist and Oasis Ritualist in it that you're like pretty okay putting the counters on, it's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, there's like a few cards that combo with Lethal Sting, but you don't want to have your removal spell be a combo. And like the worst feeling is if you're playing against an opponent that has a lot of removal spell, which is pretty common in this format. Sometimes you just don't have a creature, and then they play a bomb, and you're in top deck mode, and you draw Lethal Sting, and you're like, this actually doesn't kill it.
Yeah, I remember early on I did a draft against Aramir Naka, and her might have been against Alex. It was against one of them, and they like top deck Lethal Sting, and they're like, looked at their board, looked at my creature, like, well, this is awkward because I don't have any creatures.
Yeah,
and I'm gonna die this turn, and that's a real risk to have for like a card that you're supposed to like. A 3-mana removal spell would be something that you would draft really highly, right? Like you would just take a Dark Banishing, snap it off, and you can't do that here. So
yeah, it is surprising.
My biggest mover up is actually Open Fire. I'm not a huge fan of the 3 mana deal 3 damage. In like, I usually have them in like my top 3 commons, and I'm like pretty okay with them in red. Like, but I'm not like, yes, this is like the most exciting first pick that I could have. And while it's still not the most exciting first pick, it is one of the best, if not the best, instant speed removal spell in the set.
Yeah, I think it has moved above as the best common. Like, it's really good. There were some other cards that I was considering over it for a while, but like the red decks, there's also some pretty good aggressive decks, and being able to go face is super relevant. And
I actually don't think that's true just because of how good green is. I think that the best common has to either be Ambuscade or Oasis Ritualist.
Just because you want to be green so badly?
Yes.
Red is probably I think it's the second best color. Let me think.
I think so too.
Yeah, I think so.
But I think that like the amount that you want to be green in both sealed and in draft makes me rather like I would just rather first pick an Ambuscade over an Open Fire probably every time.
So I think sealed and draft are really different in this format. So in draft, the green decks are an archetype, in sealed, it's the archetype. Like you should be playing green.
It's the archetype.
Literally everyone should be playing green, and like Oasis Ritualist is one of the best cards that you could possibly open in sealed, and that just doesn't make any sense. But just
so that's kind of where I'm at on my ups and downs. And it's not that I didn't think that Open Fire was good. I just am like, well, this is one of the top 3 commons. You know,
it's just moved up to.
Yeah, when you look at something like Magma Spray, right? It was one of the top 3 commons because the format was so fast, right?
Well, but I think Magma Spray kind of just is the same line that you just said, where when I first saw the format, I was like, oh, Magma Spray, yeah, one of the best 3 commons. It's probably good. And then it quickly moved to, oh, no, I want as many of these as possible. It's the best red common, best common in the set, probably. Like, you need this.
Do you think that you want all of the Open Fires? Like, you would take the 5th Open Fire?
I mean, probably not. I think even 5 Magma Sprays was probably pushing it. Like, anytime you get that much, you're probably right. It probably was still broken.
That's true with Magma Spray.
It was so good. In that format, it was bonkers. But I think Open Fire, you would probably want, like, as many as you want. As long as you're playing an aggressive deck, you probably want as many as you want. Or as many as you can get. Like, if you're playing blue-red, you would take 5 for sure. Like, that is the best card.
Sure. Let's actually move on to red. Let's actually talk about red as
the color of the week.
Like the color of the week. So every week on the show, we want to bring you a color. We're actually going to add talking about it in sealed also to at the end of the color of the week. So most of what we're going to say is about draft, and then we'll like throw in some sealed stuff because I mean it's a PPTQ format that you have to play sometimes, and also if you're going to day 2 GP, you got to get 3 rounds of sealed. So it basically, if you're going to qualify for the Pro Tour through limited, sealed is the way you're going to have to do it. Let's talk really quick about the notable comments. So obviously there's Open Fire.
Yes.
And then there's Kenra Scrapper. Or Kenra Scrapper. Yeah.
That card's great, actually.
And then
it's really good.
I actually, don't shoot me for this, Danny. Please don't shoot me. Oh, I actually think you actually came around on this one. I think the next one is actually Firebrand Archer.
Yeah, I did come around. I think Puncturing Blow is close. Like that card is also good, but so the reason why I came around to Firebrand Archer.
Oh, okay. You're probably gonna say what I was gonna say.
Is because red has a lack of good 2-drops in this format, and red wants to be aggressive. So if you want to build an aggro deck and draft, you need a good amount of 2-drops. And Firebrand Archer is like significantly better than the Kenra, the vanilla 2/2. And that's if you don't like the Kenra, it's the only common 2-drop that you have. So you kind of have to pick them up, and like it's just important.
If you had to pick between Puncturing Blow and Archer, I assume pack 1 you're picking Puncturing Blow.
Yeah. Yep.
Pack 1, pick 1, it's Puncturing Blow. But by the time you get to like pick 5, it might actually start being Archer depending on the texture of your deck.
Yeah, because Puncturing Blow, I would take it because it kind of leaves you a little bit more open. Like if you're playing a green-red deck that has like some ramp and stuff, you don't really need Firebrand Archer. That's not what you're looking to do. But if you're playing a red-blue aggro deck or a red-white aggro deck, then you need it. But it's safer to take the Puncturing Blow because like I like getting my removal spells early. Sometimes that's wrong. Like sometimes in certain formats, it's more important to get your 2-drops early.
Yeah, sometimes it's Token Free Blade. Sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. But I think as of right now, I'm still at the point where I would take the Puncturing Blow and then look to start taking 2-drops highly. But I like securing that removal spell.
Yeah, one of the things that I noticed about red is how deep it is at uncommon specifically. Yeah. So when you think about, you have a Braid, you have Burning Fist Minotaur, like these uncommons are
literally all of them are good. Every single one.
Paincaster is great.
Burning Fist is insane. Magmaroth is very good. That card beats down really well. It's especially good in blue-red. It's like actually great in blue-red. So that's mostly what I'm talking about. And then
you still have, we haven't even mentioned Sandstring.
Yeah. Best uncommon in the set probably, or top few.
So when you look at a color like red in this format, especially for draft, your deck is your deck is built around your uncommons typically anyway. But like in this set, it is very, very true for red. And that that is something that we see sometimes. I think that we saw it. I want to say like in one of the Zendikar formats, one of the colors was built around their uncommons.
So I know in Zendikar, if green was really bad at common, and the only way to build a playable green deck was normally to either open like really good rares, or the green uncommon ally was like the best green deck by a lot.
Yes.
So maybe that's what I generally think of in BSE for the uncommon.
But what I'm saying is that, so you are really pulled with this, right? If I open a Braid or a Sand Strangler, I'm probably gonna snap take those.
Yeah, because they're insane. They're so good. I think that's partly why red is either the best or second best colors, because of the strength of the uncommons. Because the commons are definitely a little weaker, but the uncommons are just unbelievable.
What do you think red pairs with best in draft?
So I've liked red blue the most. I think it's like one of the top decks. So I think the green the greedy green deck is probably the best archetype in the draft. Like you have to be careful. You don't want to get too greedy, but I think it's the most powerful archetype. But second best, I think, is the blue red. Like you can actually draft it a few different ways. Normally it turns into a pretty aggressive deck with aerial guides, some Spellweaver Eternals, Firebrand Archers as your 2-drops, and then Open Fires, the Bloodwater Entity, just getting like good flyers with some aggressive 2-drops that can get in incidental damage after they can't attack through the blockers anymore. So like that deck has had a lot of success. I think Unsummon is great in that deck. You can just bounce their Oasis Ritualist, hit them for a bunch, and you can tempo out a lot of the slower decks and really punish them. I think it's the color that I've had the color combination I've had the most success of being aggressive with, actually, or one of the ones.
In my first 2 drafts, I drafted blue-white flyers and then blue-red, and I 3-0'd with the blue-white deck and then 1-2'd with the blue-red deck. And after the draft, Aaron was like, "What do you think was different?" I was like, "Actually, my blue-red deck was much better. I got a little bit unlucky. This was everything I want in a blue-red deck." Yeah. I think that you kind of explained it perfectly. It's very aerial guide based. Burning Fist Minotaur is like,
yeah, it's insane. They can never block it, and so it gets in a lot of damage. And then once it gets in some damage, they have to block it because it can fireball them. So
yeah, you also get some of the powerful cards that less people want, whether it's Spellweaver Eternal or like Tragic Lesson.
A weird one is like Imminent Doom. That card's like pretty gross in blue red, actually. And
if you're Paulo Vitor Dama de Rosa, just crushing drafts, then you can draft Wordle form. So
sure, no, yeah, that card's like blue red is really unique. You can make a lot of cards work in specifically blue red and not anything else. And so you get a lot more options than a lot of the other color combinations do. Like no one else is taking Riddle form. No other color combination can play that card. It's a blue red card.
Well, and when you think about you kind of talked about Firebrand Archer, and the reason it probably moved up so much for you is that is the deck for Fire. Yeah. It's like it is the deck for Firebrand Archer. I think that for me, I want to be red green, red white, or red blue. I really don't want to be red black.
Red black is like really bad. I mean, it's like you can get some good cards, sure, but it's not good.
I just don't think that black is at all aggressively slanted in this format specifically. Like the black specifically.
You have it's the cycling deck. That's the successful black deck that I've seen.
Yeah, and because of that, it just doesn't pair as well with these red cards.
Yeah, I'd agree.
So
go ahead. Yeah, like white red and red green. I've had like mixed success. So red is probably the most common secondary color I've had for my 4-color green decks or my rampy style green decks. Just because you can play like Puncturing Blow or Open Fire for like some spot removal. So that's my general perception of red-green most of the time. Are you thinking of like an aggressive red-green deck, like trying to beat down and play monsters and stuff? Or
I would have to get pretty I would have to have a pretty aggressively slanted green cards and get pretty lucky to do that. I would probably need Ronus' Stalwarts. Probably, I might even need something like Ronus' Last Stand. Like, I would just need...
Yeah. So, because red's 2-drops don't contribute to that that game plan at all. So that's why I've had a hard time with red green, like trying to beat down. It's mostly been my ramp decks are red green.
That's exactly how I feel too.
Okay.
It's like, okay, I really, really, really get rewarded for those early pick puncturing blows in red green specifically, where I can go 2-drop into puncturing blow to kill something great if I need to. Not as often, but I have had the 2-drop and then killed their, what was it? It was like a white. No, it was the green lion. What is that card called?
Yeah, the Pride Sovereign.
Pride Sovereign. Yeah, so I was able to kill a Pride Sovereign early by going Hope Tender into Puncturing Blow.
Yeah. And then red white, I think that one is definitely more aggressive, but it's harder to get together. Like it comes into the same problem, right? So the red 2-drops aren't very good in red white. They're like almost like Firebrand Archer is only good in blue red, and so it makes the other red color combinations like significantly weaker in my eyes. Like,
yeah, I kind of agree. You and white, to be honest, like outside of Creditor's Avenger, it also just doesn't have what you need.
Yeah, you need to lean really heavily on the exert synergy if you want to be red-white. So the red-white uncommon is really powerful if you can get a deck that has 10 to 12 exert creatures. Like that's the red-white deck that I've seen be successful, is you need to have a lot of exert. And then you're hoping to get rewarded in pack 3 by, you really want some Gustwalkers or some of the Nefcrop Entangler is really good in that deck. And so you're trying to pick up, you're kind of leaning on pack 3 a lot more than some of the other color combinations are.
Yeah, I completely agree. Let's talk really quick about sealed before we wrap this up. Because I think red is in an interesting place in sealed, and specifically because it's so easy to splash things like your Chaos Maws, your Hour of Devastations, your Nehebs into your green decks, and that's kind of what you want, right? Like I can play every Sand Strangler I open usually, which is like a real powerful place to be.
Yeah, I think red has some of the most appealing splash cards because red is really prone to having like spot removal, which a lot of times if you're in green, you don't have very much of that. And so that's what you're looking for when you're trying to build your sealed deck. You're looking at your deck, you're like, oh, I don't have very much removal. What color has the most removal? Red. It's very often red. And so I found myself being base green-red, splashing other bombs more than any other combination in sealed, just because I want to play Puncturing Blow and Open Fire. So if I open those, I'm getting especially Puncturing Blow, you need to play more mountains and more red sources to be able to cast that. And so then I find myself being heavier slanted towards red than some of the other colors. But sealed is definitely pretty distorted in this set. Like it's so heavily biased to green that all the other colors are just kind of, you just kind of discuss which bomb rares you open and how you can fit them into your green deck. It's very weird.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think that I don't know what other color combination I would want to pair with red. So like blue, I can see the other color combinations that I'd want to get in sealed, right? Like I could see myself opening a blue-black deck.
You open a Drakehaven or an Archfiend, and then you like and you could be persuaded to try to go in on that.
Yeah. So that's kind of it for red this week. I think the color's good. I think that we kind of covered it earlier. I think it's like the second best color in the set.
I agree. I think it's strong. It does suffer from having weak 2-drops. That's its main weakness. So if you are drafting a red deck, a lot of your 2-drops are going to have to come from your secondary color. And so you have to kind of plan for that accordingly and draft accordingly. So if you're in red-white, you really need to take a Catcher's Avengers over almost anything, just because you're not going to have as many options, and they're just that important for your deck. But
yeah, I completely agree. Let's move on to our training rounds. Before we do, we're going to take a quick break. We will be right back. we we are back and more Italian than ever.
Ooh.
That was so all right. So this week's training grounds. Every week on the show, we want to talk about something makes you better at Magic the Gathering or life in general. This one's very Magic the Gathering oriented because we want to talk about the importance of like knowing the cards in draft. So let's talk about that.
This is like the homework, right? Like it's like your homework that you have to do before you go into a limited format or while you're in the midst of a limited format. At least that's kind of how I think about it. But.
And I want to talk about more than just like going and listening to podcasts and reading articles. I want to talk about the specific things that you want to look for, and also what you should do with that knowledge, right? So the first thing that I want to say is knowledge is power. Like it is. Like the more you know is a meme for a reason. Like it is very powerful to have an idea of what could be going on across the table from you. And I have a pretty good idea, to be honest. And in Magic, that opportunity to have that knowledge is basically readily available to you. It's not hard to get that knowledge and to be able to, guess what your opponent could reasonably have. And we're going to talk about that. But I think the important thing to note is you do have the power to gain the knowledge that you need to know the cards in a given format. So what is the main importance of knowing those cards going into draft?
So for me, before I go to a draft, I mean, I like to get a basic knowledge of like what some of the cards are, what the keywords do, like what do the colors look like they're trying to do generally. But a lot of it, you kind of have to learn while you go. So I've learned that studying or like reading the spoiler and listening to podcasts or reading articles, that it doesn't get you all the way there. Like that's like the starting ground.
Do you listen to, Danny?
I listen to limited resources quite a bit, especially the first few of a format. I think getting different opinions of power levels of cards is really interesting. It's like probably the biggest appeal of limited to me is every time there's a new set, you're trying to evaluate cards and figure out what's good, what archetypes are good, and just listening to opinions helps.
There are a lot of articles that come out before a format comes out. So for our listeners, you're probably a listener like me, meaning you learn through listening to stuff. And so what I do, so if you have an iPhone, there's an app called Audiofi. And what it does is you can go onto a website, and inside of your Safari application, you can click share. We'll actually let you download it to the article to Audiofi, and you can actually go ahead and listen to those articles instead of reading them.
Cool.
And so I'll do that with a bunch of different limited articles, and there will be all kinds of stuff, right? Somebody's going to write an article on all of the removal and combat tricks. Somebody else is going to write an article on something else about the draft format, right? LSV is going to write a set review with every single card and every single color on it. So he's going to write 6 or 7 articles. Then you have limited resources. Then you have us. Like there's so much limited information when a set comes out, and that is the time to leverage that and really gain that knowledge, because early on in the format, if you know the cards that your opponent could reasonably have and they don't know yours, that's a huge advantage for you.
I have noticed that. So I do the same thing of just like right when the format's brand new, going out and getting as much information as possible does get you a leg up. I've also noticed that if you get some of that information from the first week or two after people have had an ability to like play the set. So if you like read a limited article by someone that hasn't played with the set at all, like that's good, and you're going to get a leg up. But if you read an article by a pro that's played the set for 2 weeks, their opinion means a lot more to me, and they have a lot more information to go on. So they have been playing it, and they have played with the cards. They understand how the format works better now, and so their hunches or their first guesses are now like clarified, and they have really strong opinions of what they think the format's going to look like. So I would say that like doing it even a little bit into the format is also really, really helpful.
Yeah, I think that, for those listeners who have noticed, we actually do our uncommon set review first, and then we actually do our common set review typically the day that we play the set first. So the Thursday before the set comes out, we do a draft camp day at Oasis Games. So Danny and I have actually played with cards, and it's so funny. We didn't this time because of the Pro Tour being in Japan and Danny going a week early. But typically, it's like, okay, it's this Thursday. Let's do this, and we will have already had an idea of what our commons are, and sometimes we've actually already written them, and they will change already after just those first 5 or 6 drafts. Yeah. So I agree with Danny. I think that our common set review is usually better because we've played with the cards, and we've actually gotten comments. It's like, your common set review is much better than your uncommon one. It's like, well, yeah, we've done 6 drafts already, and also probably like 6 sealed pools already.
Yeah.
So, but I think that there is a lot to be gained about certain aspects. I kind of mentioned that somebody's going to write an article about removal and combat tricks. What is the power of knowing those combat tricks going into a game of limited Magic?
Yeah. So anytime, like, combat is probably the most influential part of limited games. Like, you attack and block, that's how you win. And combat tricks are either really good or really bad. And so if you can make combat tricks really bad, you're at a really big advantage. So the reason why combat tricks can be really good is because they're efficient. So they pay 1 mana to try to kill your 3-dropper, your 4-dropper. Like Synchronized Strike is a really good example of it. It's 3 mana and it tries to kill 2 of your creatures. And so it's like a huge blowout. But if you have a good knowledge of what the Synchronized Strikes or the Saving Graces or the Active Heroisms are in the format, then you can make more educated decisions and put yourself in positions that you won't die to those cards. You won't automatically lose. Like, if you get blown out by a Synchronized Strike, you practically lose. But you can play around it and just attack with 1 creature, or hold up your instant speed removal spell when you're going in for the attack. Like, there's lots of options that you have to you if you know what you need to face.
Yeah, I think that you kind of just mentioned one that you might never, I would never have expected to be playable, and it's actually pretty good. On the set review, we kind of talked about Saving Grace a little bit, and I was like, is this card safe passage? Because if it's safe passage, it's like, it's good. Mm-hmm. That's a good Magic card. But if it's fog, it's not good. Mm-hmm. So like, where does it lie? And going into the uncommon set review, we didn't know. We didn't know if it was safe passage or a white fog. It turned out to be safe passage, and it's probably pretty playable.
Yeah. So I lost a match at the Pro Tour to Saving Grace.
You are not the only one. That happened on camera.
Both games of my match I lost because of Saving Grace. It countered a lethal Inferno Jet, and then
That's pretty bad.
Yeah. It was bad. And then maybe this one wasn't at the Pro Tour, but it effectively countered it saved 5 of his creature from a Chaos Maw. Oh. So I've had some Saving Graces do like some disgusting things, and like they were in positions that I wasn't prepared to play around Saving Grace. So like Inferno Jet, I was just mostly hoping that he didn't have it. Like, I was like, I thought about it, but like, I can't win if I don't do this. So sure. I guess this is what I'm doing. But yeah, it was. So it's like a card, like, if you know about it, you can wait to play your Chaos Maw until they don't have 2 mana up, and then your Chaos Maw will win. But
it's not even just the ability to play around it. It's the ability to make the decision, right?
Yeah.
Like, sometimes you're going to decide that you can't play around the combat trick or the removal spell or whatever is in the format. But the thing is because you know about it, you get to make that decision. Yeah. You are now empowered to think about it and decide. Whereas if you were just willy-nilly attacking into stuff and you had no idea, you're not empowered to do that.
A great example in this set is Sandblast. I feel like that is one of the biggest example of, like, you have a decision that you can make. If I play a really powerful 3-drop and then they pass on turn 3, if they're on the draw and they're in white, I can make the decision. I can either attack into their Sandblast, let them use their mana, or I can kind of like see if I can get a read if they don't have the Sandblast or if they do. And just knowing that is a card that I can play around, that you get to make decisions and you get to influence if you're going to win the game more or less likely. Like, I don't know if that makes sense, but
So what is it reasonable to play around? Like once you have that knowledge, am I supposed to like have the knowledge that Hour of Revelation is in the format, and every time I play against a white deck, think about Hour of Revelation? Be like, well, I can't play this 10th thing onto the board because then they're gonna get me.
Yeah, it's a balance. So that's part of the skill of playing of draft is you're trying to balance risk and reward with playing around certain cards a lot. It's a pretty important skill. A lot of the skill is actually wrapped up in the draft itself. So if I'm drafting and I see multiple active heroisms, and then I'm playing against my white opponent, and there's a position where active heroism would be really strong. If I've seen 3 active heroisms, I'm much more likely to play around it than if I've seen 0 active heroisms or 1 active heroism. And so that's a big part of it, and that's something that most people aren't great at drafting. Like I can definitely get better at that, is in each pack really looking for some of the cards that you need to pay attention to, like Sandblast, active heroism. Inferno Jet is a great example. If you see Inferno Jet or multiple Inferno Jets, you need to really watch out for that. Like there's some impactful cards that you can get a lot from just paying more attention in the draft that you're playing in.
I think so too. And I think that when you think about some of the, I'm probably never going to play around your Glorybringer.
No.
Like, I'm never going to play around your Wrath Effect. And the reason, at least until I've seen it.
Yes.
And or if you're clearly playing so you have one, right? And that's the kind of things that you need to pick up on. So you need to know that Hour of Revelation, Hour of Devastation, and Bantu's Last Reckoning are in the format in order to even think about why did my opponent do nothing and not play a land last turn? Like, what could that possibly mean? Why did my opponent make all out attacks into?
Why did he keep his 7-card hand and then not play anything until turn? It's turn 4 and he still hasn't played anything. Like,
right?
Yeah.
And we it's our job to like find the cues, know the cards, and then play accordingly. It can't just be, well, once I know my opponent has something, I'm gonna do it. You can have that information before the game starts. You get to empower yourself with that knowledge. And that's really important in draft. And it's gonna gain, like, everything that you do in Magic gives you a little bit more of a percentage point, right? Like maybe it's worth half of a point. But like that half a point matters in Magic the Gathering, especially the higher and higher you get in Magic the Gathering. And if you're trying to go infinite on Moto in draft, which is impossible, so like don't try. But what I'm saying is like like if you're trying to like gain value and gain equity, like those percentage points are going to matter to you. And you can't just give up equity in a draft by going into it blindly. And you certainly can't do it by not even thinking about what your opponent can have during the match.
Yeah, like I always like watching the Pro Tour coverage and seeing their Pro Tour win percentages. And they're like not that different. Like the difference between John Finkel and a good random Pro Tour player is like a couple percent, 3-4. Like it's not too much, but it's the difference of over thousands of matches. You're winning a lot more matches, and that can make a big difference at a tournament or in a specific game. And that's honestly what a lot of the enjoyment that I get out of Magic is just trying to improve. Like there's so many little things that you can get better at that you might not see day-to-day changes in your win percentages because there's still some randomness, right? But you can, over a long time, you can definitely notice when you're getting better, when you're being more cognizant of the cards that your opponents could have, when you're playing around combat tricks better. Like, and it's always very rewarding when you play around something and then you instantly get the satisfaction of seeing it being correct. So,
I had one of our patrons. He was telling me that we talked about his win percentage in Magic, and I was like, it is a little low. Like, you need 66% like in PPTQs to like consistently top 8 at least. So when you think about that, like you have to get there if like you want to have a chance to get to the Pro Tour, right? And that's his goal. And he was like, okay, And then he comes to me like a week later. He's like, I don't think I can do this. I couldn't get above 50% this week. And I was like, wow, that is a lot of pressure to put on 1 week of
Magic.
Magic.
Don't need to do it immediately. Like, yeah.
And it is like, you don't have to know every card in the set. That's not what we're saying. We're saying know the important ones. Actively take a role in learning the cards and in your improvement, and try and get better and try and know the things that are available for you and against you. So that's it for the training grounds this week. We have a special announcement, and that announcement is that we are ending How Would You Build on this podcast. The reason is because I don't think that it's serving the purpose that we want, and also Danny can never remember to do it.
Yes, so that's definitely a big part of it. But I definitely think you're right of like, it did put a weird amount of like prior knowledge in order to listen to that segment of the podcast, which I think I like the idea of moving that section over to discussing sealed pools on the Facebook page. I think that's going to be a great way that you can get instant feedback. You can post how you would build it and like get some more conversation going. Because I think with sealed pools especially, there's lots of options, and getting more real-time feedback is definitely going to be a good way to improve in that way.
So what we're going to do is we're going to add a biggest sealed mover to the show every week. So we'll have our biggest up and down in draft, and then we'll also have our biggest mover overall in sealed for each of us. And then also every week on the color of the week, we will also talk about the color in sealed specifically, because we believe in making sure that there is sealed content every week on this show. And it is something that we believe very strongly in. We believe one of our key listeners is the PPTQ grinder. And so we want to help you out, and we want to do what we can to give you the best chance to go win your next PPTQ.
Sure.
All right. Don't forget to check out our sponsors at wrong sponsor. Don't forget to check out our sponsors. And I have a lot of sponsors to deal with through all my next content. Don't forget to check out GameGrid. You can go to play@gamegrid.com and find a Game Grid near you. You can also go to the Mana Base, and you can watch the guy who was undefeated against Mason Clark, Nikachu.
Is it like 1-0?
GP top 8 competitor Nikachu, the guy with the mission to crush Mason Clark. You can check them out at the Mana Base. You can check out their sponsor at Fusion Gaming. I don't know if it's 1-0.
It's something.
You can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/ccmtg. You can support the entire network there. You have constructive criticism. You have us. You have the YouTube channel. It is really appreciated. You can also check out our newest podcast at Common Knowledge. They're live every single week on YouTube. You can just check them out on the YouTube channel, and we really, really appreciate that. Danny, where can people find you?
I am most active on Twitter at DJ Cathro. If you ever have any questions, you can fire my way. I love talking to people on Twitter. And then hover around the Facebook page, Constructive Criticism, Facebook family is great. So
you can find me in the Facebook family group. That's just the Constructive Criticism family on Facebook. You can find me on Twitter at Spencer13H. You can find me on Facebook at Spencer Stephen Howland. You can find me on MTGO at Spencer13Dev, and you can find the show every week on mtgcast.com, constructivecriticism.com, YouTube, and Twitch. We stream live every single week at 11 p.m. Eastern at twitch.tv/ccmtg. Thank you, everybody, for listening this week. We appreciate it so much. If you have the chance, we would really appreciate it if you could subscribe to the new iTunes feed for this show and leave us a review. It would mean a lot to us. To wrap up, we want to talk about our Twitter outreach program. You can tweet any pick with hashtag what's the pick. If you tweet it, we'll read it. The latest hashtag what's the pick is not in English, and I don't think it's for us. But if you want to take a picture of your pack and let us know what you think the pick should be, or you want our advice on what we think we would have picked, just tweet it with hashtag what's the pick on Twitter. Just send us the screenshot, and we would love to discuss your pick here on the show at the end of every week. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We'll see you guys all next week.
Have a good one.